The slap echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. Naomi didn't even process the sound at first, only the scream that followed. Her son's scream. Sharp. Panicked. The kind of sound that claws through a mother's chest and doesn't let go. Noah. The 1-year-old tumbled backward in his high chair, his tiny hands flailing as his face turned red and blotchy. A perfect red handprint stood out against his soft cheek. A thin line of blood traced from the corner of his mouth. Naomi was on her feet instantly, chair crashing behind her as she scooped her baby into her arms. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed. Across the table, Alicia stood frozen, one manicured hand still raised in the air, her eyes wide with shock, not at what she'd done, but at what had happened to her purse. Red wine soaked into the pristine white leather of her Chanel bag, pooling at the bottom like a crime scene. "Alicia," Naomi said hoarsely, clutching Noah as he sobbed against her chest. "You slapped my baby?" Alicia's mouth opened and closed. He ruined it. Do you know how much that bag costs?" Silence slithered through the room. If you're already hooked into this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. You won't believe where this goes. Naomi looked around the table, waiting for outrage. For shock. For anyone, to react. But her father, Richard, only sighed. Her mother, Diane, shook her head in annoyed disbelief. Her brother-in-law, Bryce, leaned back in his chair with a smirk tugging at his lips. "Oh, Naomi, stop being dramatic," Diane said. "It was just a little tap." "A tap?" Naomi whispered. "She hit him. He's bleeding." Alicia crossed her arms defensively. "Maybe if you actually watched your child instead of letting him flail around, this wouldn't have happened." Naomi stared at her sister like she'd never seen her before. Or maybe she had, and had just refused to admit it. "He's one," Naomi said. "He's a baby." Ethan's chair scraped loudly as he stood. His movements were controlled, but his eyes were ice. "That was assault," Ethan said evenly. "On a minor." The word assault landed hard. Bryce laughed under his breath. "Relax, soldier. It's a family issue." Ethan turned to him slowly. "Family issues don't permit criminal behavior." Richard slammed his palm on the table. "Enough. We're not turning Christmas dinner into a courtroom." Naomi's hands trembled as she rocked Noah. "So that's it? That's all you have to say?" Diane's lips pursed. "Alicia didn't mean it. You know how emotional she gets about her things." Naomi's voice broke. "My child is bleeding." Alicia scoffed. "Oh my God, it's barely anything. The bag is completely ruined." That was the moment something in Naomi snapped. Years of being dismissed. Of being called boring. Of being treated like the extra daughter who was only invited out of obligation. It all came crashing down in that instant. Naomi stepped closer to the table, eyes blazing. "Your bag can be replaced. My son could have been seriously hurt." Bryce stood. "You're overreacting." Ethan stepped between them. "Sit down." The air tensed like it might explode. Richard pointed toward the door. "If you can't behave in my house, you can leave." Naomi looked at him through tears. "Your granddaughter just slapped my child and you're defending her." Richard's jaw clenched. "Don't twist this." Ethan took Naomi's hand. "We're leaving." Diane shook her head in disgust. "Unbelievable. Ruining Christmas over nothing." Naomi laughed, a broken, hollow sound. "Nothing." They walked out into the cold night with Noah still crying softly in Naomi's arms. The door slammed behind them. The laughter inside resumed almost instantly. That sound haunted Naomi all the way home. Inside their car, the heater blasting, Ethan drove in silence. Naomi wiped Noah's cheek gently with a tissue, her chest tight with rage and heartbreak. "They didn't care," she whispered. "They really didn't care." Ethan's jaw tightened. "They will." Naomi looked at him. "What do you mean?" Ethan pulled into their driveway and turned off the engine. "I mean this ends now." Naomi didn't reply. Her eyes drifted down to her sleeping baby. The red mark still faint on his skin. That night, after Noah finally slept, Naomi sat alone in her home office. Her hands hovered over her laptop keyboard. Part of her wanted to shut everything down. Pretend nothing happened. That's what she'd always done. But not tonight. She logged into the financial systems of Redwood Automotive. Her father's legacy. The company that funded Alicia and Bryce's lifestyle. The company that paid for the purse that almost cost her son his eye. Within minutes, Naomi's heart sank. Sales were down. Way down. But operating costs were climbing at an impossible rate. That's not possible, she murmured. She dug deeper. And deeper. By 3 a.m., Naomi's hands were shaking not from exhaustion, but from pure disbelief. A shell company. Registered less than 4 years ago. TCS Holdings. Owner names, Alicia Langston. Bryce Langston. Vendor payments disguised as consulting services. Quarterly wires. 6 figures every time. Naomi's breath hitched. You stole from the company. Her fingers flew. Employee retirement funds. The trust account that held decades of savings. The firewall should have made it nearly untouchable. But it wasn't untouchable. $1.2 million missing. Naomi covered her mouth as nausea twisted violently in her stomach. They stole from the employees. The people who had worked for her father for decades. The people whose backs built the wealth Alicia flaunted. Naomi stood slowly. The slap. The bag. The silence. The theft. It all connected now. She walked into the bedroom and gently shook Ethan awake. You need to see this. 1 hour later, Ethan sat beside her, eyes locked on the screen. This is federal, he said quietly. This isn't just theft. This is ERISA violations, money laundering, wire fraud. They're done. Naomi whispered, my parents know. Ethan exhaled slowly. Then they're complicit. Naomi felt tears slide down her face again, this time burning with betrayal instead of pain. They protected her again, she said. Just like tonight. Ethan closed the laptop gently. They made a mistake. Naomi looked up. What kind? They underestimated you. And right now, before this gets even darker, pause the video, like, subscribe, and comment justice if you think Naomi and Ethan should take everything from them. Because what comes next changes everything. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. They hurt my baby. Ethan's voice was ice. And now they're going to pay. Outside, the snow continued to fall quietly, burying the world in soft white silence. Inside that house, war had just begun. Naomi didn't sleep. By sunrise, 3 monitors glowed in her office, financial statements layered over wire transfers, shell company records stacked beside payroll reports. The house was silent except for the clicking of keys and the low hum of machines processing years of deception. At 6:12 a.m., she whispered, "Oh my God." Ethan stepped into the doorway, coffee in hand. "What did you find now?" Naomi pointed. They didn't just steal from the employee retirement accounts. They used those accounts as leverage to secure private loans. They mortgaged the same collateral twice. Ethan's eyes darkened. That's aggravated bank fraud. And they hid the loan interest inside fake vendor invoices, she added. They're bleeding the company dry on purpose. Ethan set the coffee down slowly. Why? Naomi pulled up another file. Because Bryce lost millions offshore. And they used the company to refill his losses. Ethan went still. Offshore. She turned the screen. Cayman Islands. 3 limited liability funds. No U.S. registration. No disclosure filings. No legal authorization to solicit. Ethan whispered, he's running an illegal fund. Naomi nodded. And Alicia is listed as a beneficiary on every single one. Ethan exhaled sharply. They didn't just commit fraud. They built an entire laundering operation. Naomi's voice trembled. And my parents signed for the loans. The words hung heavy between them. They chose her, Ethan said quietly. Naomi swallowed hard. They always have. Hours passed in a blur. Naomi reconstructed the money flow the way a surgeon traces invisible veins. From Redwood automotive accounts to the shell vendor. From the shell vendor into Bryce's offshore fund. From the offshore fund back into luxury real estate, imported cars, jewelry, and speculative crypto. By noon, she had a full digital crime scene. At 12:47 p.m., her phone rang. Alicia. Naomi stared at it before answering. What? You embarrassed me last night, Alicia said sharply. You slapped my child. Oh my God, you're still on that? Alicia snapped. It was an accident. Naomi's knuckles tightened around the phone. You meant to hit him. I saw your face. Alicia scoffed. You always play the victim. You've been jealous of me your entire life. Naomi laughed softly. Jealous of what exactly? Everything, Alicia sneered. The life you never had. The money. The freedom. The influence. Naomi looked at the bank records glowing on her screen. You mean the stolen money? Silence. Then Alicia laughed. You don't know what you're talking about. I know you siphoned over $1 million from employee retirement accounts. You're lying. You laundered it through your fake consulting company. More silence. Naomi continued calmly. Bryce's offshore fund is illegal. You're both facing federal time. Alicia's voice sharpened. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't destroy this family. Naomi whispered. You destroyed it when you hit my son. The call ended abruptly. Ethan stepped closer. She's scared. She should be, Naomi replied. 2 hours later, Bryce showed up unannounced. Ethan opened the door and blocked the entrance. You're not welcome here. Bryce smirked. Relax. I just came to talk. Naomi walked up behind Ethan. There's nothing to talk about. Bryce's eyes flicked toward her. You're about to ruin a lot of lives over a misunderstanding. Naomi stepped forward. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a conspiracy. His smirk faltered for half a second. We already contacted counsel, Bryce said. You have no proof. Naomi held up her tablet. I mapped every dollar you moved in the last 4 years. Bryce's jaw tightened. You don't understand how dangerous this is. Ethan stepped closer. We understand exactly how dangerous it is. For you. Bryce leaned in, voice low. You think the government protects people like you? Ethan smiled without humor. I am the government. For the first time, Bryce looked genuinely unsettled. We'll see, Bryce muttered, backing away. That night, the threats began. A black SUV idled outside their house for over an hour. Anonymous calls flooded Naomi's phone. You need to stop. You don't know who you're messing with. This ends badly for people like you. Ethan unplugged the landline and rerouted their home security system into full lockdown mode. They're rattled, he said. That means they're vulnerable. Naomi stared at the monitor showing the empty street. They hid a baby when they felt exposed. What do they do now that they're cornered? Ethan didn't answer. The next morning, Naomi received a call from Redwood Automotive's payroll manager. We just lost access to the retirement account portal, the woman said, panic thick in her voice. Someone changed the credentials overnight. Naomi whispered, they're trying to move what's left. She opened her system remotely. Too late. Another $300,000 vanished. Naomi slammed her desk. He's draining it in real time. Ethan grabbed his jacket. We move now. They drove straight to the office. When Naomi entered the building, conversations died mid-sentence. Every employee could feel something was wrong. Richard stood in the lobby, face tight with fury. You need to leave, he snapped. You're causing panic. Naomi walked past him. I'm saving their retirement. Diane appeared from the stairwell. You've gone too far, Naomi. Naomi finally snapped. Too far? You defended a woman who slapped an infant. You defended thieves. You defended criminals. Richard's face reddened. That's your sister. And that is my child. The employees gathered closer now. Whispering. Naomi raised her voice. Your retirement funds were stolen and laundered through offshore accounts owned by my sister and her husband. Gasps erupted across the room. Bryce burst through the back doors. She's lying. Naomi turned a monitor toward the floor. These are live wire transfers happening right now. The room erupted into chaos. Bryce lunged forward. Ethan stepped in front of Naomi instantly. Touch her, Ethan said calmly, and you will never walk free again. Security rushed in. Bryce was forced back. Alicia screamed from the staircase. This is her fault. She's destroying everything. Naomi shouted back. You destroyed it when you chose greed over humanity. Employees started recording on their phones. Diane broke down crying. Naomi, please. We'll fix this. Just stop. Naomi wiped tears from her eyes. You had years to fix this. Police sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Bryce bolted for the exit. Security tackled him to the floor. As officers stormed in, Naomi felt the full collapse begin. Before the officers could even reach Bryce, his phone buzzed across the floor. Offshore transfer complete. Only half the stolen money remained recoverable. Naomi's knees nearly buckled. Ethan caught her. "It's not over," he whispered. "We can still take everything else." And right here, pause for just a second. If this story has you locked in, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment right now. Because the confrontation that's coming next changes everything. As Bryce was dragged away in cuffs, Alicia collapsed screaming on the stairs. Richard dropped into a chair like a broken man. Diane sobbed uncontrollably. And Naomi stood in the center of her childhood battlefield, finally seeing it for what it had always been. The first subpoena landed 48 hours later. Then the second. Then the third. By the end of the week, Redwood Automotive looked less like a business and more like a crime scene wrapped in legal tape. Federal agents moved quietly through offices. Hard drives vanished into evidence boxes. Account access was frozen without warning. Richard stopped answering his phone. Diane stopped leaving the house. Alicia posted luxury throwback photos on social media like nothing was wrong. And Bryce vanished. Naomi sat across from Ethan at the kitchen table, legal documents spread between them. "He left the country," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "He boarded a private charter out of Miami at 3:14 a.m. yesterday." Naomi closed her eyes. "So he ran." "He thinks he did," Ethan replied. "He's about to find out he didn't." Naomi pulled up a screen showing remaining offshore balances. "He still has nearly $800,000 sitting in Cayman transit accounts. It's frozen, but only temporarily." Ethan studied the data. "We don't need that to break them." Naomi looked up. "Then what do we need?" Ethan's voice dropped. "Your parents' signatures." Naomi stiffened. "For what?" "To take Redwood Automotive out from under them," he said. "Before the government seizes it and the employees lose everything." Naomi inhaled sharply. "You're talking about ownership transfer during an active federal investigation." "Yes." She stood, arms crossed. "That's almost impossible. Not if we structure it as a voluntary assumption of liability and debt." Naomi turned back toward the screen slowly. "They'd lose everything." "They already have," Ethan said. "They just don't know it yet." Her hands trembled as she zoomed in on the cascading debt. The mortgages, the vendor fraud, the bank exposure. This company is already dead. Ethan met her gaze. "Unless you resurrect it." Naomi whispered, "They'd never sign." "They will," he replied. "If prison is the alternative." Silence settled between them. Naomi thought of Noah's face. The red handprint. The blood. "They don't deserve mercy," she said slowly. Ethan nodded. "This isn't mercy. This is containment." 3 days later, Naomi requested a family meeting at the Redwood boardroom. Richard refused at first. Then the bank called. Then the federal liaison called. Then Alicia called screaming. By nightfall, they all agreed. The boardroom doors closed with a hollow finality. Richard sat at the head of the table, pale, hands shaking. Diane clutched a tissue so tightly it shredded between her fingers. Alicia sat rigid, arms crossed, jaw tight. Bryce's chair remained empty. Naomi placed a single manila folder in the center of the table. "This is everything," she said calmly. "Every wire, every shell, every loan, every pension theft, every offshore transfer." Richard's voice cracked. "You turned us in." Naomi didn't blink. "You turned yourselves in." Alicia laughed bitterly. "You think you're so righteous." Naomi opened the folder and slid out the first page. "This is the ERISA violation charge. It carries up to 30 years per count." She slid the next. "This is the wire fraud charge. 20 years per count." Another page. "This is the bank fraud indictment." Richard's breathing grew shallow. Diane whispered, "We didn't know it was this bad." Naomi's lips trembled. "You didn't want to know." Alicia snapped. "Bryce handled the money." Naomi turned her gaze to her sister. "You signed every beneficiary document." Alicia flinched. Ethan leaned forward. "Federal warrants are drafted. Bryce will be arrested the moment he steps foot in any U.S. territory. He's already flagged through Interpol." Diane sobbed openly now. Richard whispered, "What do you want?" Naomi slid one final document across the table. "Redwood Automotive transfers to me for $1. Alicia barked a laugh. "You're insane." Naomi didn't respond. Richard stared at the paper. "You expect us to give you everything?" "You already lost everything," Naomi said quietly. "This just determines whether the employees lose everything too." Diane looked up. "And us?" Naomi's throat tightened. "You will lose the house, the cars, your social standing, your illusion of control." Richard slammed his hand against the table. "You're sentencing us to ruin." Naomi's voice broke. "You sentenced my son to a slap across the face and said it was nothing." Alicia shot to her feet. "You're still using that?" Naomi stood too. "I will use it forever." Ethan placed a second folder in front of Alicia. "This one is for you and Bryce." Alicia's smile vanished. "Confession of conspiracy," Ethan continued. "Asset forfeiture. Full restitution. You sign this, you avoid decades in prison. You refuse, we escalate it federally." Alicia snatched the folder open. Her face drained color with each page. He added softly, "Your G-Wagon, condo, jewelry, accounts, crypto wallets. All of it returns to the retirement trust." "You can't," she whispered. Naomi stepped closer. "You already did this to yourself." Diane collapsed into sobs. "Please don't do this. She's your sister." Naomi looked at her mother through tears. "And he was your grandson." The room fell into dead silence. Richard's hand shook as he picked up the pen. "If we sign, we walk free?" Ethan answered, "You avoid prison. Nothing else." Richard signed. Diane signed. The ink seemed impossibly loud. Alicia stared at the confession form, trembling. "Bryce won't forgive me." Naomi said quietly, "Neither will history." Alicia screamed and hurled the folder across the room. Two security officers stepped in and restrained her as she fought violently. Ethan picked up the papers from the floor and placed them back in front of her. "You will sign." Through sobs, rage, and humiliation, Alicia finally did. As soon as the last signature dried, Ethan placed a call. Bryce was arrested 6 hours later trying to wire the final offshore balance into a private account. When Naomi drove home that night, the entire world felt eerily quiet. She pulled into the driveway and sat in the car without moving. Ethan turned to her gently. "It's done," she whispered. "It doesn't feel like victory." He nodded. "It rarely does." Inside, Noah slept peacefully in his crib. Naomi stood over her son long after midnight, watching his chest rise and fall. "For you," she whispered. And right now, if you're watching this story unfold and feel that tension tightening, take 1 second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below, because the final reckoning is coming fast. Outside, the first foreclosure notice was already being drafted. And the real consequences were just beginning. The news broke at exactly 6:03 a.m. Local automotive empire under federal investigation, retirement funds stolen, executives cooperating to avoid prison. Naomi watched the headlines scroll across the screen while Noah ate cereal beside her, blissfully unaware that his entire family legacy was imploding in real time. Ethan muted the television. "You don't have to watch this." Naomi didn't look away. "Yes, I do." By noon, Redwood Automotive was surrounded by reporters. Helicopters hovered overhead. Former employees gathered in clusters outside the building, whispering in disbelief. Richard and Diane were escorted out the back entrance by federal agents trying to shield their faces from cameras. There was no shield strong enough. Diane covered her face and sobbed. Richard stared straight ahead like a man already serving a sentence in his mind. Alicia wasn't given the courtesy of a quiet exit. She was led out the front. Hands cuffed. Mascara streaked. Hair undone. Her scream cut through the crowd as she saw the cameras. "I didn't do anything. This is her fault. This is all Naomi's fault." The reporters swarmed. "Did you authorize the transfer of employee pension funds? Is it true your husband fled the country? Did you assault your nephew on Christmas?" That last question broke her. She lunged toward the reporter and had to be restrained by 2 agents. Naomi watched the footage later that night in silence. Ethan sat beside her. You okay? Naomi nodded slowly. I thought I'd feel satisfied. And? I feel empty. Ethan took her hand. That comes later. By the end of the week, Bryce was extradited in chains. His mugshot circulated everywhere. The once charming fund manager now looked like a hollowed-out stranger with defeat etched into his eyes. Alicia attempted to retract her confession. It failed. Her assets were seized within 72 hours. The condo, the jewelry, the cars. Naomi personally supervised the first restitution wire back into the retirement trust. When the confirmation alert popped on her screen, she covered her face and cried for the first time since Christmas. The employees received notice that their funds were returning. Many of them cried too. Some fell to their knees in the parking lot. Others showed up at Naomi's office just to say thank you. She hugged every one of them. Richard tried to call her the next day. She let it ring. Diane left a voicemail. We've lost everything, Naomi. We're selling the house. We're leaving town. Naomi deleted the message. Alicia called from jail. Naomi didn't answer. Bryce sent a letter. Naomi burned it. At 30 days exactly, the final ownership transfer of Redwood Automotive closed. Naomi became CEO. For $1. She stood alone in her new office for a long time after everyone left that night. Her father's desk. Her father's chair. Her father's mistakes. Ethan joined her at the door. You don't have to sit there if you don't want to. Naomi slowly lowered into the chair anyway. I do. She turned to the employees' photos lining the wall. This belongs to them now. Not the Langston name. Ethan smiled. You did that. Naomi exhaled. They nearly destroyed everything. But they didn't, he said. You stopped them. 3 months later, Alicia took a plea deal. 10 years suspended. 5 years probation. Full financial restitution. Permanent criminal record. She was released to a halfway house in another state. By 6 months, Bryce was sentenced to 27 years in federal prison. The judge made an example of him. Naomi didn't attend the sentencing. That chapter was closed. And right here, if this part of the story hit you hard, take 1 second to like the video, subscribe, and comment "still watching" if you're still with us. Because the final chapter brings the real emotional payoff. 1 year after the slap, snow fell again. But this time, it fell clean. Naomi stood in the renovated Redwood home, the one that had once belonged to her parents before foreclosure reclaimed it. Now it was filled with lights, food, and laughter. Employees and their families filled the rooms. Children ran through the halls. Laughter echoed freely. There was no fear here. Ethan stood by the fireplace holding Noah, now 2 years old and giggling as he tugged on his father's uniform collar. Naomi watched them from across the room, her chest tight with emotion. One of the senior mechanics approached her quietly. I never thought I'd trust my retirement again. You gave us that back. Naomi whispered. It never belonged anywhere else. A woman who had worked payroll for 26 years hugged Naomi tightly. Your parents built this place. You saved it. Naomi swallowed hard. No, they built it for greed. We rebuilt it for people. Music filled the air. Food covered the tables. No screaming. No slaps. No fear. Later that night, Naomi stepped onto the back porch, snow crunching under her boots. Ethan joined her, arms sliding around her waist. You did it, he said softly. Naomi shook her head. We did. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Naomi whispered, I used to think love meant enduring abuse. Ethan brushed his thumb across her hand. And now? Now I know it means refusing it. Inside, Noah laughed so loudly it echoed through the quiet night. Naomi closed her eyes. Peace finally felt real. But one last shadow still lingered. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. Naomi hesitated. Then answered. Alicia's voice cracked through the line. You won. Naomi said nothing. Alicia whispered, and I lost everything. Naomi replied softly, you lost it the moment you raised your hand toward a child. The line went dead. Naomi slipped the phone into her pocket. That chapter was finally sealed. The fire burned steadily behind her. The laughter continued inside. And for the first time in her life, the silence didn't hurt. It healed. The night wound down slowly, not with exhaustion, but with fullness. One by one, families gathered their coats. Children fell asleep in corners. Laughter softened into quiet goodbyes. Snow continued to fall gently as the last guests stepped into the cold, waving back through the warm yellow glow pouring from the house. Naomi stood at the doorway thanking each person like it mattered more than anything she had ever done before. Because it did. When the door finally closed, the house felt different than it ever had in her childhood. Not heavy. Not tense. Not braced for impact. Just still. Ethan locked the door and leaned his back against it. You okay? Naomi nodded slowly. I'm learning what okay actually feels like. They walked through the living room together. The fireplace crackled low. Noah slept on the couch wrapped in a blanket, his tiny chest rising and falling steadily. Naomi sat beside him, brushing her fingers through his soft hair. He doesn't remember, she whispered. Ethan knelt beside her. But you do. Naomi's eyes filled. That night almost broke something in me. But it didn't. She looked at Ethan. It built something instead. They carried Noah upstairs and laid him gently in his bed. Later, Naomi stood alone in the dark hallway of the house that used to belong to her parents. The same walls that once trapped her now felt like proof that nothing owned her anymore. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She already knew who it was. This time, she answered without hesitation. Alicia's voice sounded smaller than it ever had. I heard what you did with the company. Naomi didn't respond. You didn't have to save those employees, Alicia whispered. You could have let it burn. Naomi replied quietly, I refuse to become you. A long silence followed. Alicia finally spoke again. They won't talk to me. Mom and Dad. They won't even answer my letters. Naomi felt a familiar ache stir, but it no longer controlled her. That's the consequence of choosing yourself over everyone else. Alicia's voice cracked. Do you hate me? Naomi closed her eyes. I don't trust you. That's not the same thing. The call ended without another word. Naomi stood there a long time after. Some goodbyes didn't hurt because they were sad. They hurt because they were necessary. Weeks passed. Life settled into something steady. Redwood Automotive stabilized. New leadership formed from longtime employees. Transparency replaced secrecy. Paychecks came on time. Retirement balances grew back month by month. Naomi didn't just run the company. She listened to it. Every story of sacrifice. Every story of fear. She carried them all. One morning, she found an envelope on her desk. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Her childhood home. Empty. Boarded. Sold. She stared at it for a long time before sliding it into a drawer and locking it away. Some ghosts didn't deserve to follow her forward. Spring came quietly. One afternoon, Naomi stood outside the daycare center watching Noah wobble toward her with uneven steps and an unstoppable smile. Mama, he shouted. She dropped to her knees and caught him just before he fell. You ran to me, she laughed. Ethan passed behind them with coffee. Looks like he always will. Naomi looked up at her husband. So will I. That evening, they sat on the porch together watching the sunset. Ethan said softly, Do you ever regret it? Naomi didn't hesitate. I regret the years I stayed silent. I don't regret the moment I spoke. Ethan nodded. That moment saved more than you know. Naomi leaned her head on his shoulder. It saved me. Not all wounds vanished. There were nights when Naomi still woke from dreams of shouting, of slaps, of broken glass and spilled wine. But now those dreams ended differently. Now she always stood up. Always left. Always chose her child. 1 year and 6 months after the slap, Naomi received an official notice. Bryce's final appeal was denied. He would serve every year of his sentence. She folded the paper and set it aside without emotion. Alicia violated the terms of her probation 6 months later. She disappeared for 3 days. When authorities found her, Naomi was asked if she wished to make a statement. She declined. Her silence was the loudest boundary she'd ever set. That same night, Ethan found Naomi in Noah's room watching him sleep. Do you ever wonder who you'd be if none of this happened? Ethan asked gently. Naomi thought for a moment. Smaller. Ethan smiled. You're the strongest person I know. She looked at him with quiet certainty. No, I just stopped betraying myself. The following Christmas came faster than she expected. Snow returned. So did the food. So did the music. So did the families. But this time, Naomi didn't feel like a guest at someone else's table. She was home. Ethan lifted a glass that night as everyone gathered around. To new traditions. Everyone echoed it. To new traditions. Naomi looked around the room at people who trusted her with their livelihoods, their stories, their futures. She had once been called boring, invisible, forgettable. Now she was none of those things. As laughter swelled again, Naomi felt her phone vibrate in her pocket one final time. She didn't reach for it. Some endings didn't need revisiting. She watched Noah chase another child across the floor, his laughter ringing out pure and unbroken. Ethan squeezed her hand. You okay? He asked. Naomi smiled through quiet tears. I've never been better. And if you've made it all the way to the end of this story, don't scroll away just yet. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below with the word healed if this story moved you. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. Because sometimes, the quietest person in the room becomes the one who changes everything. And sometimes, justice doesn't look like revenge. It looks like peace.